everyone, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Nick.
And you're listening to It Takes Two, the podcast where two people take two movies with the same plot or premise and watch and discuss them.
And continuing on with Pride Month. And you gave me a look there for a second, like, what? No.
I was like, what are we continuing from?
Yep. On the previous episode of It Takes Two, is 93's Mrs. Doubtfire and 96's The Birdcage.
Yes.
Both movies relating to men dressing up like women, starring Robin Williams.
Yep. So this is our 50th episode, which is exciting.
Congratulations.
Go us, get into 50 episodes. So it's a fun episode. These movies might not normally be paired together. But they are both 90s movies starring Robin Williams about a middle-aged man who dresses as a woman in a misguided attempt to help his children.
That's true.
So, in my opinion, they're pretty close.
Yeah, they are very close, actually.
We can definitely talk about them. Now, one of them is significantly more relevant to Pride Month than the other.
Yeah.
And the other has a lot of opinions that have not aged very well, in my opinion.
Honestly, there's a lot of language in both of these movies that has not aged well. I'm not going to say it.
Yeah.
Because it is offensive. But The Birdcage used the derogatory term for gay men that starts with F, so you can do it. You can think that word yourself at home a lot. Way more than it should have in the 90s.
But it is a cultural, like, it is gay, the characters are gay men referring to themselves by that, so it's a little bit of the reclamation of language, which, I would have interacted with people nowadays who would refer to themselves by that word, but I would not use that word. Because, but it's like, I think it's similar to, I would describe myself as queer. Mm-hmm. But you feel uncomfortable saying the word queer in that context.
Yes, because I grew up in an era where you use the word, like, I have evolved, I have changed, and there is no derogatory word for a derogatory meaning when I say the word gay.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember being a schoolyard boy and someone would do something that was not heteronormative.
Yep.
And you would then tease someone and accuse them of being gay.
Yeah.
Now, the weird thing, this involves mainly, I would say Western white men.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a very weird culture of this idea that doing anything that is not heteronormative refers to, it's that kind of behavior. Yet straight white dudes do a lot of, like, borderline gay stuff to each other, and it is such a weird, like, I don't know if this is just a Western thing, but, like, white men are weird. And you only look back at it now being like, what the fuck?
It's a weird, like, it's almost like a repression thing in like you said, Western, in quotes, Western societies. Because if you look at, like, South Central American societies, Southern European, like Mediterranean societies, it's quite normal to be almost flamboyant, but to be very, I don't even know, like, to express your emotions in a way that in some Western societies, not that those aren't Western societies, but you know what I mean, in what you're considering, like, the Western societies, like this, like, straight white man kind of thing, you're, like, taught almost to repress emotions and you don't talk about them, whatever. And that's also what leads to, like, the friend zone thing of this idea where these, like, dudes who have been told their whole life, you don't talk about your feelings, you don't share this, whatever, and then women who are kind of brought up by a similar society to be very in touch with feelings and to like, you know, help people in that way almost, to be
Yeah.
very emotionally intelligent. You know, there's this stereotype which unfortunately happens a lot of this like dude who meets a woman who just like treats him as a person, and then he's like, oh, she must be in love with me and I'm in love with her.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's just being a basic decent person.
Yeah, the more we get into gender politics, because it does sort of come up quite a bit in both of these movies.
Yes.
Which was why, you know, I'm happy to segue into that. The thing about Mrs. Doubtfire, why it's still a movie that's worth talking about, even though some of it is a bit dated, as you did mention.
Yeah.
I
think Birdcage has aged better.
Yeah, Birdcage has aged better. It is it's not gender normative for the wife to be the breadwinner and her to be the one that's super involved with work.
Right.
And, you know, when you get Robin Williams playing the fun dad and his parent, like the kids basically hold the divorce between them, spoilers obviously, hold the divorce between them against her, against the mum. And it's really, because unlike you, I didn't grow up in a household with both parents.
Right.
It was one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I spent time with my father, I spent time with my mother. And as, you know, sorry to get into my personal life here, folks, but as you have pointed out, and this is all part of, this is why do men start podcasts instead of going to therapy? Well, I'll tell you. You pointed it out. I have a much better relationship with my father, and I look back with fond memories of my father.
Yeah.
Where I don't have that on the other side.
Yeah.
And I spent more time with my mother because that's how society runs, even though, you know, that's not obviously always the case. But, like, you know, people talk about equality and wanting equality between you know, the sexes, and when it comes to, especially in New Zealand, I can't speak for every other country, but I've known not a lot, but I've known people who have suffered from this, is even if the father is a better parent and in a much better situation, the courts will always side with women.
It's interesting because they explicitly touch on that, Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
Because they want to say that's not what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting because it is, you know, it was in the 90s.
Yeah.
So I would have thought that would be even more that they're leaning towards, oh, well, give it to mother. But the judge expressly says, you know, we try not to side with the mother every time. We try to like evaluate the whole situation, and you've made improvements in these areas, but also you've done these things that, you know, show that you're not ready for custody in that way.
And it's interesting because, like, I can understand that with one child.
Yeah.
But they have 3 children.
Yeah.
Why can't they have split custody of the kids? Like, I know that sounds really ruthless straight away, but I know for a fact that step parents have, like, not picked, but, like, you know, there've been times where, oh, well, you're going to go live with your father for multiple children. And because sometimes, spoiler alert, guys, young men need a male influence in their life, or no, that's probably too, a stronger dominating influence in their life that they can turn to when they have the problems that males face. And it could be the fact that they're, you know, it's that old, I know this is going to date me, but like, I'm old. Well, not really, but I feel it. There's this whole concept of like, you know, kid talks back to mum, and it's always like, well, wait till your father gets home, and the child being like, oh no, but you don't need that to be the father and mother. You just need, and it works in any case, you need the good guy and the bad, well, not the good guy and the bad guy, but you need...
I think, and I hope she won't mind me saying this, but I think my mom was scarier than my dad growing up.
Yeah, I can definitely get that.
I don't, I don't know. I don't think, because it's, these movies, if we look at them, the other movie is one where the child in situation where he's a grown adult. Well, he's 20 years old at the time we meet him, but he's been raised by two men.
Yeah, and didn't know his mother at all.
Yeah, he'd never met his mother.
Which we'll get into later, hopefully, if I remember. It's Val?
Val, yeah.
Val is much more mentally mature and in a much better place than his fiancée.
Yeah.
That whole situation, like, for a little bit of context, folks, The Birdcage is an interesting movie because the overarching storyline of how they end up in the situation at the end of the movie, like, you get the introduction to the characters, but the overarching storyline in The Birdcage is a little bit more surreal, but also at the time it makes a hell of a lot of like real connotations of these over the top, and I'll get into this in a second, why I always find it really funny when this always happens, over the top conservatives trying to cover up their own personal issues within their political ideals, because he's literally a senator trying to get re-elected.
Yeah.
And it turns out the co-founder died in bed with an underage prostitute who was also a person of color.
Yeah, so he's a Republican senator in Ohio.
Yeah.
And he's looking to get re-elected, and he's started a board for like morality or something.
Which is also funny because it also comes back to not the previous episode, but the episode before that, when we were talking about morality policing. And, for those who haven't listened, it was related to Escape from LA, where being a Muslim was made a crime in America.
Yeah.
And you were exiled from the country.
Yeah, so this guy, he expresses some of these views at one point where he thinks homosexuality is destroying America and all this stuff. And, and it's interesting because they don't actually play him as the bad guy. He's definitely got...
He's greasy,
He's got views that are not good. But he has these morals that he believes in, because as like a Republican Christian or whatever, and he actually sticks to them, whereas the whole problem with him is that his co-founder was also preaching these morals, but then was sleeping with an underage black prostitute.
Yeah.
Which was, it was bad. Whereas he is actually, he's preaching these family values, but he also, is living them to some extent.
Yeah.
Even though he's, as you said, his daughter is in a less stable mental, or, she's less well-rounded as a person than the son of the gay couple.
It's interesting because if we were playing apples and oranges here, you have Val's influences are his father, who's a gay man, who is a business owner. So he's working, he's not even working class, that's above.
Yeah.
But the work he's working in is not is
unconventional.
I wouldn't say adult entertainment, but that's the issue that I think that's facing politics these days, is people think drag shows are adult entertainment, but he's in the entertainment industry, which relates to men performing musical numbers and drag in a club scenario, which is, for the times that I've seen performances have, honestly, not going to lie, ladies, but you need to step your game up, have been absolutely fantastic. And it's sort of that over-the-top adage that makes it so fun, and I don't understand where this, like, link between pedophilia and drag has come from in the conservative mindset at the moment, and it's so bizarre to me because it's such like I don't know how many by percentage, because I haven't looked into this, where the correlation is in that, because I don't think there is one.
No.
Because the old there's an Australian comedian whose work I'm about to steal, but unlike Amy Schumer, I'm going to admit it. He says that being straight is more gay than being gay.
What does that mean? Because
a man wants a woman to look up, basically mother him, soft and caring, and a gay man wants a big, strong man to fuck him. That is much more manly, in my opinion.
I think that's, really overgeneralizing.
True. But it's funny because Val is the more mature. His household is the more stable, even though it is not gender normative. He's a much better person.
Yeah, well, because he's actually interacted with a diverse group of people from a young age.
Yeah.
He's been brought up around people from, different countries, different genders, different...
Immigration is also a thing that's put in there, which conservatives aren't super happy with.
Yeah. So the whole, he's been a part of a society and a community that really feels like a community, whereas they're like...
Oh, I didn't even remember just until then they're also Jewish.
Yeah, they're Jewish.
Yeah.
They've got this whole... But you see, like, there's a whole section where, so they've decided... So her parents are coming to visit his parents, but they don't know that his parents are gay men. They don't know that they own a drag...
It's not even they don't know. It's just
they've been told.
Automatic. Yeah.
Well, no, but they've been told something different about it.
Yeah, because... Again, like I want to point out, she lied.
Yeah.
The fiance lies to her parents.
Because she knows that they won't approve.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say was that if they decide they're going to just make it look like it's not owned, that the apartment is not owned by gay men, and the whole drag community comes up and moves things around and goes and and you have like different people going and buying stuff from or borrowing stuff from different shops in the area and being like, oh well, straight people love this kind of thing.
Yeah, straight people love hunting trophies. I
replace this with a crucifix, and they threw in these old books to look fancy. You know?
the giant crucifix.
Yeah,
because their house goes from like a home to like a weird. Like, everybody makes comment about it when they go into the house. It's just very weird.
It's like sterile almost.
Yeah, it goes from like a weird, like obviously it's a very over the top. Like, I don't know many. I haven't visited enough homes of gay couples. But I'm pretty sure the main decor in their houses aren't just statues with huge penises. Not my experience. Maybe I have to get out more. But the amount of giant dick statues that they have to hide is hilarious. And then one of them just pops up later when he's looking for a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Because he's just like shoved it into a cabinet.
Yeah.
But then to replace like the art and the culture with like a giant crucifix and make it a crucifix and make it very like Balenciaga sterile.
Yeah. I feel like we need to specify that they are in Miami and Florida, and I think I know gay women in Florida who have like penis statues in there. So maybe it's just a Floridian thing.
They don't put fluoride in their water, folks. They are raw dogging life. It is a true, all those stories about Floridian people, it's like, those are true humans. That's what happens when the government doesn't interfere and put fluoride in your water. Not that I'm saying, I'm not
Oh my
admitting
God.
that fluoride actually does anything. Well, other than what it's supposed to do, which is teeth.
It does do teeth.
It does do teeth. Makes you grow extra teeth. That's why I have hundreds.
So many teeth.
Hundreds like a
You're
shark.
just drinking the fluoride water.
Yeah. Anyway, it's Mrs. Doubtfire, because I think we've spent a lot of time on Birdcage.
Yeah,
in
well,
this
I'm really
episode.
interested to know your because we've both seen Mrs. Doubtfire before.
Oh yeah, like I've seen it a dozen times.
Yeah.
But dear God, it has aged now.
Yeah, I think it's still a good movie.
It's still
enjoyable.
Still fun.
Though I took a note at one point which was just literally that growing up is siding with Miranda over Daniel. It's like realizing that actually he's been a shitty father, even though he's like the fun dad. She's the one who's earning the money, and she's also, trying to get the kids to go through their education and try to give them a stable home life, whereas he's like totally impulsive and like renting petting zoo animals and stuff just for the fun of it, and while they're kids it seems fun, but he's actually it's not helping them.
Okay, I'm going to interject here, and I'm not going to disagree with you completely. I think they're both shitty parents.
Yeah, they both have problems.
Miranda,
I think she's better. I think she's trying more to be a parent. I think he's trying to be a friend.
The issue I have with Miranda is she even admits it that she always comes off as a bad guy.
Yeah.
But even when Daniel's not there, she has to hire a nanny to look after them because she's not involved. She comes home at dinner time.
Yeah.
And I know, it's a working class lifestyle that we all exist in the West anyway, where your dad or your mum, whoever's working later, is, one person has to, be home for when they finish school, and one person, usually most people who get paid lots of money don't finish at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Which, it sucks, and it's a reflection on our society that the government needs us to have children so they have taxpayers to pay for the debt they're currently borrowing now, yet they don't want us to have money or a healthy relationship with said children. It's all part of the system. And yeah, I just think, like, looking back and watching Mrs. Doubtfire with a more critical eye and trying to take as much information in, I think they're both shitty.
I think they needed to find a better balance. And I think...
Yeah, but they would revive them talking to each other, and they never did that.
I think that, funnily enough, they find it at the end of the movie. When they're co-parenting as separated, divorced parents.
I think they find it halfway through the movie.
When he's pretending to be
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah, but if he did that, if he had done that...
Oh, he should be he should, like, be on jail.
No, but what I'm saying is that, like, if Daniel, as Daniel, before the events of the movie, before it escalated to the point that Miranda wants a divorce, if he had stepped up and learned to cook and got the kids to do their homework and did all the things that he does as Mrs. Doubtfire, which are things that he's doing, because he knows Miranda will approve of them, which means that all along he knew that these are the things he needed to do to improve their relationship, to improve his relationship with his kids.
Yeah.
He knew what he needed to do. If he had done all those things as Daniel before they reached that breaking point, they would have a great relationship.
Yeah.
But instead, he just like undid all her work so that then she would come across as the bad guy all the time. So he was putting her in a situation where she couldn't not be the bad guy.
Yeah.
And then you get this, basically they should have got a restraining order against him. So I understand why the judge at the end is like, you're not, I cannot give you unsupervised visits with your kids.
It'd be interesting to speak to a lawyer, for funsies, or get a lawyer's opinion of, like, what crimes Daniel actually committed and what sentence he'd get, because pretty sure you can't, like, do that.
Yeah, also he committed, like, CV fraud or whatever, yeah, it's an odd situation.
And it's odd.
But he's so manipulative. The whole way through the beginning, until almost the end of the movie, he's just very manipulative and narcissistic.
It's also the ripples of him doing the acting.
Yeah.
Also has consequences of people you really forget about. I'm pretty sure the lady, I can't remember the lady's name, the one that has to come and like visit him.
Right. Yeah.
She's gonna get in trouble. Like she's gonna have work problems, like professional problems.
Yeah, because she didn't realize that he lied about a sister.
Yeah. The other thing that always bugged me, and I'm not the first person to say this, the person I feel the most sorry for in the entire movie is the bus driver.
Oh, I think you're going to say Stu.
No.
I feel bad for Stu.
I think, despite the fact that she wanted to have a relationship with that person,
yeah,
it is way too soon.
Yeah, but it's not his fault that it's too soon. And no, he's very respectful.
That's again why we're saying that both of them are shitty parents. You go from, I want a divorce, Daniel leaves, and then within a couple of months, like she's only been there for a couple, like Mrs. Doubtfire's only been in the household for a couple of months before he's taking them out on dates and stuff.
Well, he, like when he first contacts Miranda, it's before she asks for the divorce.
Yeah.
Because she gets that call right before she gets the call about the party that Daniel's throwing.
So she was already, I'm not accusing Miranda of cheating, but she's like already like checked out of there, like interested in pursuing other relationships.
Yeah, I think it's a very much, and I don't think, because at the end there's no indication. Is there? I can't remember now. Is there any indication that her and Stu are still together, or is that?
Oh, who knows?
Because very much what it reads as is, so her and Stu knew each other in college and dated, I think, or were at least interested in each other. And so she's in this position where she's in this marriage that is making her miserable, and this guy comes along who was like, who's like, this perfect man or whatever, and is respectful and is a gentleman and is nice, and she loved him before, and it's like almost her going back and being like, oh, I wish. It's like, it's basically just wish fulfillment. It's like, oh, I wish that had been the path I had pursued.
But the issue that I have is Miranda spends no time trying to find herself.
Yeah.
Which is self-improvement, which is one of the biggest things you have to do when you leave a long-term relationship.
Whereas Daniel does that.
Yeah.
But he does also obsess over and stalk his wife, which is not healthy. But he does actually improve himself.
And you also get a situation where she, again, is now involved in another relationship where she's not going to spend time with the children.
Yeah.
Like, there is no... If they're working together professionally and then seeing each other, which is, like, the whole thing, because Stu originally contacts Miranda asks for Miranda to help with a project, because she's, like, an architect or designer.
Interior designer, I think, yeah.
So that's already... She's spending personal time with him and also professional time with him. And again, the people that are getting neglected are the children in this situation.
But they do hang out with the children. They go to the swimming pool together, they go for the dinner together.
That's how you get... This is dating advice for guys who want to date single mums. If the kid likes you, the mum will like you.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind if I want to date any single mums.
Sweet. I'll watch that. I'll watch you fail at that.
Rude.
Yeah. Pepsi challenge.
In contrast and comparison, the relationship between Armand and Albert in the Birdcage,
so much healthier.
It's so healthy. It's funny because it's so much more dramatic.
Yeah, the drama within their relationship is hilarious because it is so over the top and campy, and just kind of beautiful in the most vibrant, fur bowler kind of way.
Yeah. They know each other. They
Yeah.
like really intensely, deeply know each other. They know every. So there's like moments where like, because Albert is very dramatic.
Yeah.
And Albert will be doing things or saying things, whatever, and Armand is just like, okay, I will listen to this, and then now I know now is the moment I can interject.
Yeah.
But then also Albert is upset because there's white wine in the fridge, and he's like, Armand, I know you only drink red wine, and I only drink red wine, so why is there white wine here?
Yeah.
You know, and like they just have obviously been together for 20 years or so, because I know they mustn't have been together when Armand and Val's mum, had sex.
Yeah.
And conceived Val, but she asks when he meets her, she asks, "Oh, are you still with Albert? How's Albert?" So obviously, very shortly after that time, presumably, so probably around 20 years, him and Albert have been together, and they've raised Val together, and yeah, they just really know each other, and no matter how dramatic their communication is, they are communicating, and there's even like Val wants Armand to get rid of Albert so that he's not messing up the thing, and then Armand tries to talk to Albert about it, and then he goes back to Val and he's like, nope, why would I not let him stay? He refers to him as his friend and companion, which I don't think is accurate. But they've got a very loving relationship, even though it's very dramatic.
It's very interesting watching, like I said earlier, that their relationship is far more healthy.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that there is so much drama within their communication, but their communication gets done, and it is everything is sort of like almost borderline an act. Like the sequence in the beginning which I think is a really important way to have communication within a relationship, and I think ours was a little bit stronger than it is, and it could be always better. But it is there's a lot of validation, and I'd love to see what's the show we watch all the time?
Which show that we watch all the time?
The therapist in the
Cinema Therapy. Yeah, I was thinking of watching the Birdcage. I'd love to see their take on Armand and Albert as a couple,
because it's he comes off as very dramatic, and it's even like he doesn't want to go on stage.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, you don't love me anymore. I'm getting old. I'm getting this. He's just like, no, like, put all your like self-criticism away. Like, I do appreciate you, and it's just like, all right, I'm ready for the stage now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, and this has come up quite a lot with us talking about it recently. Some of the best artists have the biggest criticism for themselves, and it's like we were talking about the suicide of Chester from Linkin Park.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting showing how much pain that guy was clearly in.
Yep.
And it's a terrible.
Robin Williams.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking about him in these movies.
Yeah, and I'd completely forgotten, unfortunately. But yeah, that's a perfect example. It's just like the people who present outwards the most dramatically tend to also be the people who destroy themselves internally. It's really sad, but it's just, I guess it's just part of the curse of being that talented. Linkin Park may not be for everybody, but like you can't deny that Chester wasn't very talented. It's interesting having again Robert Williams and leaving his family behind. Which sucks because they obviously had, like, him and his daughter Zelda obviously had like quite a close relationship.
Yeah.
They are a lot healthier, even though the discussions they have are very dramatic.
Yep.
But there's never a question that comes up during their arguments if it was about them. It's about a situation.
Yeah.
Which I think is a lot healthier. Like, obviously, we're watching a movie, we're not seeing, it's not 24 and 20 years worth of seasons of 24.
Yeah.
But, yeah, every time they communicate, they're communicating about something, and each person is bringing how they want to deal to it with the table, and it goes through the whole, like, meeting of the family. It's like, we can do this. It's like, no, that's, like, bad idea. But then it all sort of works out at the end. It sort of ends up in absolute friggin' chaos.
Yeah.
But,
I love it then.
Yeah.
I feel like the whole movie is an allegory for coming out, almost.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because very much Albert is this very flamboyant, very openly out person, and the whole thing is the Republicans are coming over and they want to hide Albert.
Yeah.
And present as a heteronormative family and, with a husband and a wife or whatever. And then the mother, so Val's mother, they contact her and want her to come to this, and she agrees to it even though she's never met him before.
Which is super fucked up.
Yeah, but like, he has a loving family, and he was
just
raised
that,
by Albert. And
yeah, so neither at a point where it's like, hey, do you want to meet your son? But now it's like, hey, we need you to hide the fact that we're gay from a Republic senator.
Yeah, she's like, sure, let's do it.
Like, what?
But she's delayed in traffic and
what's
whatever.
What's her political leanings?
I don't know. And Albert dresses as a woman and poses as Val's mother without telling anyone that he's going to do it. And they're like, oh, God. But, where was I going with this? I've forgotten. Oh, yeah. So this whole idea of, like, hiding it and whatever. And then they come clean to the Republican senators, but it's very much about they love and are proud of Albert.
Yeah. And
it's like, and it's, because it's because the actual mother shows up. Or, the birth mother shows up.
Yeah.
And the guy, the guy eventually says, like, how many mothers do you have? And he takes Albert's wig off. And Albert, you can see it in his face, is thinking, he's saying, I'm not his mother.
Yeah.
But what he says, I have one mother, this is my mother, Albert. You know, and Armand is like, this is my wife, Albert. And it's very much this moment where they're like, no, let's give up these pretenses. This is what our family is like, and this is the truth, and this is where we are proud of it, and we love Albert.
It's their butler / like live-in
Agador, played by Hank Azaria.
That's just it's so.
Is he Apu? Is he Apu in The Simpsons? How many people is he in The Simpsons? He's a bunch of people.
I don't remember. That character got removed.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's been not retconned, but definitely removed because of cultural reasons.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because depending on which race interview, talk to the people of the race that I've seen interviews of the person he's representing, he's a positive role model.
Right. In
comparison to literally everybody else in there. And he has the most character development in the entire show, but they're like, nah, it's racist. It's that's that equivalent of...
I mean, it is. There are stereotypes and things in it.
Yeah.
So I can get it.
But,
I mean, he's also very much doing stereotypes and stuff in Birdcage. He's fantastic, though.
Yeah. They're playing the very...
He's their house man.
Yeah. But he's also, like... He embodies literally every aspect to a cartoonish level of, like, a young gay man.
Yeah. And it's funny because apparently he was trying out two different voices, and because he was afraid that like high-pitched voice was too stereotypical and it would be like offensive, but he talked to a gay friend of his and they were like, no, that one's the more realistic one, so go with that one.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah.
That they're like, okay, we've got to hide the fact that we're gay, and there's their houseman out the back in only like a thong doing gardening.
Yeah.
And they're just like, This is gonna be difficult.
Yeah, it's like, we gotta get Agador in some clothes, and then it's like he's not wearing the shoes.
Shoes.
And,
That's whole...
and he puts on a deeper voice to pretend to not be their gay houseman, and it's like, and he's like, Agador, you need to put shoes on, and he's like, ah, yes, but when I put the shoes on, I fall over. And you're just like, no.
That's because you're wearing shoes that are far too comically big for you, and you're also not wearing socks.
Yeah, so he's just like, he's so clumsy. It's so funny though. It's so good.
What the hell was in that soup? It
How
was purple. Like, it had eggs in it, and it was
he said it was sweet and sour.
Sweet and sour seafood chowder.
No, it wasn't. No, because they said seafood chowder because they didn't know what it was. Because he said there was prawns supposed to go in it.
Yeah.
And then he was like, "Why did you tell them it was sweet and sour?" Or sorry, why did you tell them it was seafood chowder? It's sweet and sour, like poor man's soup or something. Yeah. I can't remember what way he said it. And it was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "I made it up." They each put together whatever.
I spent the entire day making this one thing because he was just so out of depth in the kitchen.
Yeah, yeah. It's such a good movie though. Yeah. It's such an incredibly good movie. And there's so, I don't think we could even reach the bottom of the amount of stuff we could talk about, especially in terms of like queer cinema with the Birdcage.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot. I mean, I know we talk about gender politics, but like gender in general is a question for me when it comes to Albert.
Like identity.
Yeah, because I don't think that Albert is a man. I don't think that Albert is always a man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know it's classic for a drag queen when she's a queen to be referred to as she, her pronouns, and by her drag name, which is what, Starina. So she's Starina. Every time she's performing, she's Starina, or when she's in performance modes, like when they're doing rehearsals and things, and they use she, her pronouns. And then when he's Albert, and it's he, him pronouns. But like, they refer to Albert as Miss Albert sometimes, and Albert is my mother, Albert is my wife, and Albert himself, looking in the mirror, talking about aging and getting less attractive and stuff, refers to himself as a middle-aged thing rather than a middle-aged man.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't shock me if Albert is written deliberately or vaguely to be, gender fluid or gender queer.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a cis man. I don't think he's a cis gay man doing drag. But I don't know, it's complicated.
Yeah, which is sort of part of the charm, and also the thing that scares the shit out of conservative people.
Yeah.
Because they can't explain it in a clear detail, so therefore they're just like, can't understand, and people fear what they don't understand. Yeah. And that's
highlight example in Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah. When the son walks in on Mrs. Doubtfire going to the bathroom, sees that she's standing up to pee. Yeah.
Runs into his sister. Now, I remembered this as a moment that is inherently transphobic because I remembered him, the quote, which is, she's a he, she.
Yeah.
Which is not great. But I'd forgotten that his first instinct is, you need to call the cops.
Yeah.
It's like, I've discovered Mrs. Doubtfire pees standing up. We need to call the cops.
Yeah. That is a crime.
It is it's like, what?
The thing that I actually find confusing about that whole sequence, and this is going to get into some meta level shit for you, is sitting at home, so wherever you are, on the way to work or in your job, is we see multiple times through the movie the scene, so it wasn't like the what he was using changed. We see the way the suit is put on, and it is a one-piece. I don't want to say fat suit, but it is a fat suit. Yeah, it's an enhancement.
Yeah, Robin Williams described it as like wearing a beanbag chair. It's like half fat suit, half beanbag.
There's no way he would have been able to urinate.
No.
I don't think going to the bathroom would have been possible in that suit without, like, literally...
taking the whole thing off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that whole sequence doesn't make any sense canonically.
No, a lot of it doesn't, because there's things like the actual Mrs. Doubtfire makeup is like in 8 pieces.
Yeah.
Whereas we see it as one
like,
prosthetic
slab.
mask. Yeah. And there's like the bits where he goes to the bathroom, you know, when they're in the restaurant and he's doing the 2 things at once.
Yeah.
Every time he gets changed, it's sped up because there's obviously no way for him to physically get in and out of it that quick. So there's a lot of suspension of disbelief around the actual Mrs. Doubtfire costume.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely some dated opinions and dated language. Though I will say, when he goes to his brother, so his brother is a gay man played by a gay man.
Yeah.
Harvey Fierstein,
I love Harvey. He's so fantastic. He's so fantastic in Independence Day, to the point where I saw him on screen and with his voice and his mannerisms, I was like, fuck, I want to watch Independence Day again.
Yeah, he's great. I love him. And he, but when Daniel goes to his brother, so Uncle Frank, when he wants to become Mrs. Doubtfire, he says, "Make me a woman." And he's just like, "Oh, I'm so happy." And I, like, love to think that he genuinely thinks that in that moment that Daniel was just coming out as a trans woman to him, and he's just like immediately like supportive and proud, and I thought that was very sweet. And then you have, you know, Uncle Frank and Aunt Jack, is it? They're both played by gay actors, but yeah, you get that he then is still supportive when it's just the weird stalking your wife and kids thing.
Yeah, Mrs. Doubtfire was, I wouldn't say victim, but also fell into there was early on in, I wouldn't even say early, but when people had the skills to do editing at home and place it on YouTube, there was a lot of cuts of movies where they were remaking trailers to change the genre of the movie.
Yeah.
And the very popular one is turning into thrillers.
Yeah.
So
Mrs. Doubtfire
worked really well because it is super creepy. Like some of Daniel's actions as Mrs. Doubtfire are super creepy.
Yeah.
The other one that always comes to mind is the Forrest Gump stuff, because out of context, Forrest Gump is not a good person at all.
In context.
In context either, yeah. But yeah, it's a very interesting, because, you know, the audience is supposed to side with Daniel, but like you watch it and with the lens of 2023 and you're like, they're both terrible. Yeah. Well, that's my opinion. I think they're both terrible.
Well, I think as a kid thought Miranda was like horrible and a mean mom and whatever, and it's like as an adult I'm like, she's trying. Yeah. She's not perfect, but she's trying to actually give these kids a life, whereas Daniel was just like not helping the family, and just because he wanted to be. And it's a thing that you do see every now and then, where it's like one person in the relationship, you know, one parent wants to be seen as like the cool parent, so they'll like do things to make the kids happy, but actually in the long run are not good or are making, you know, things worse. You know, and the fact that he had just lost his job, so he's unemployed, so so he knows that they're living on one salary and it's her salary, and he rents out like all these zoo animals and stuff. And it's like, how much money did you just waste on that when you know that your finances are going to get tighter?
It was the 90s.
Yeah, it's still, you know, he's irresponsible.
Yeah.
And by the end of the movie, he's much more responsible, but he still has done this weird, obsessive shit. And at some point, he should have realized that he needed to stop.
Talking of obsession and Stu's motivations aren't 100% altruistic either.
What do you mean?
Well, because when they're at the, like, pool club, like, is there a such thing as gated pool community, like?
Yeah, they're at a pool, yeah.
Okay.
Private.
With open bars?
Pool. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's San Francisco.
It feels like a country club kind of thing to me.
Yeah.
He's only dating one of the pros he sees is because he didn't have kids of his own, so he just gets to dating Miranda. He also gets children.
Well, no, because he didn't want. Because it's not that he doesn't want children. That's the guy says to him like, "Oh, I'm surprised you're dating so many children because you said you're never having children." And he was like, "Yeah, but I'm pushing 40 and I don't want to end up alone."
Yeah.
So it's the kids are irrelevant. He just wants to not. He's it's a selfish thing. He's not in a relationship because he wants to be in a relationship with her. He's in a relationship because he wants to not be alone.
Yeah, which is
not healthy.
Yeah, that's really bad.
Yeah. I think, can I just mention, not about Stu, but just while we're talking about healthy relationships, I just want to talk about Albert and Armand again and say that, like, it is not quite to the same level of drama, but I feel like it's the closest I've seen to our relationship on screen. I feel like, and
yes.
it was kind of difficult to watch it because I've seen the Birdcage multiple times before, and I love the Birdcage, but I haven't seen it while I've been in a relationship.
Yeah.
And watching it, I was like, oh no, I'm Albert.
Yes.
Albert is me.
Yes.
I don't think I'm as dramatic.
If you'd have said that the other way around, I'd be just like, you are delusional.
No.
Help.
You are Armand and I am Albert, and that's, yeah. But it is they do have a healthy relationship. It's just a dramatic relationship.
Yeah.
But I just felt watching it, I was like, oh, this kind of is it's not quite our dynamic, but it's the closest I've seen to it.
Without going into it more of our personal stuff in this episode, you are very apocalyptic.
True.
Yeah. It is all or nothing. It is the end of the world.
That's an anxiety thing.
It's very tiring sometimes.
Yeah.
But I do love you and I do care about you, but Jesus Christ.
I don't think I'm at the same point as Albert, but no. It did hold up a little bit of a mirror to me that that is what I could be.
There are things about you that your anxiety makes more positive for me, because that's probably sounded very odd. The fact that you always have this very overwhelming fear of being late,
right,
is such a positive thing to me.
Right, because
it makes me adore you because I friggin' hate being late.
Yeah.
And your ability to be ready on time and walking out the door when we say, I'm not going to shit on your entire gender, but I have dated women in the past who they would be getting ready at the time you're supposed to leave.
Yeah.
And it used to drive me absolutely batshit insane.
I mean, I know people like that, and I feel like you have to, if you want to maintain the relationship, whether it's a friendship or romantic or whatever, you have to be willing to find a compromise in that. Like, I have a friend who I'm not sure if they listen to the podcast or not. They'll know who they are if they do.
Shout out to you if you know who you are.
But like that, they would say, let's, do this thing at this time, and then that would be the time they start getting ready.
Yeah.
So, I had to adapt to being like, hey, let's meet at this, we're going to get this bus together, let's meet at this bus stop at this time, knowing that the time that we actually needed to leave was half an hour after that. Yeah, so then I would get there half an hour after that, and I would still get there first.
See, the issue that I have with that, in a relationship setting, like in a friendship setting, it's fine if you understand that the person has issues with arriving on time.
Yeah.
In a relationship, that's very manipulative behaviour. If you're like, right. We have to leave at 2 p.m, knowing you have to leave by 3 p.m, just to give that person an hour-long buffer.
Yeah.
The difference.
And that's just going to get exhausting as well.
Yeah. The issue that I always had, that I don't have now, is some people have this, I don't know, like procrastination for things.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not have that problem. Like, I think it was the one that always stands out to me that literally shocked me to the core, was our first official date, where we were dating but then didn't know we were dating. It was very complicated.
So it was our second date.
Yeah.
Because our first one we hadn't kind of figured that out.
Yeah, it was a first date that didn't start off as a date and then switched halfway through. So it was a 0.5. And then 1.5 or 2, depending on your perspective of it. You know, we without details, but we're meeting up with each other at a train station.
Yep.
And being that I always like to be early, thought I'll rock up to the train station and then wait around a bit, and then
you got there and I was waiting outside.
Yeah, the train and I was like, "What the fuck? This has never happened to me in a relationship before."
Surprise.
Yeah, like I've got friends who, you know, you'd be like, "Cool, so the movie's at 4 p.m. We go, and it's like we want to meet at 3 p.m. And at 3:30, they text you and say, "On my way now." Yeah. And you're like, "Motherfucker, it's half an hour away." Like,
I've had a friend before who was also very timely, and we would say, "Oh, we'll meet." Like it was like we'll meet at 1:00, and then we'd both arrive at like 12:40, and be like, "Oh, hey, how's it going? Let's go." But we knew it.
Yeah.
You know, but we also knew that if they weren't there until 1:00, like that's fine. But if it was after that, you'd be like, "Oh, what happened? Like, where they?
Are you okay?"
Yeah.
It happened. It happened recently.
Did it?
To us, yeah.
Oh yeah, we were gonna be late for something, and I messaged him. We're like,
no. Before, previous to that, you were doing the after. I was gonna say after school.
Oh yeah, I was doing my course, and we were supposed to meet up, and then I wasn't there on time because the course didn't end on time, and you fully panicked.
Yeah.
Because I'm never late.
You're never late. And I was just like, what is happening?
Oh God, she's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the movies.
I think we were grand scheme. It was all related.
Yeah. It's related to us being Albert and Armand. So if you want to know what our relationship is like, just watch The Birdcage.
Yeah. It's only slightly less dramatic.
Yeah. It's interesting because I didn't realize until I was looking at the notes, the IMDb trivia for these films, that Nathan Lane had originally been considered to play Uncle Frank in Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
But Harvey Fierstein was like really wanted to work with Robin Williams and knew that he was going to be in a movie where he had a gay brother and was like, "I need to work with you on this." And Robin Williams said to Nathan Lane, I will work on another project with you, I promise. And then with The Birdcage, Robin Williams was cast to play Albert. And Steve Martin was cast to play Armand. Which would be a very different film, I feel. And Steve Martin had to back out of it because he had other conflicting commitments.
Yeah.
And then Robin Williams said, "Hey, I would like to step away from flamboyant characters and I don't want to just remake Mrs. Doubtfire. So I would like to play Armand instead of Albert." And then they said, "Okay, who can we get to play Albert?" And they were like, "We need Nathan Lane to play Albert." And Nathan Lane was due to be in a Broadway production, and so he turned them down, and they so desperately wanted Nathan Lane that the directors of The Birdcage went to the producers of the Broadway show he's supposed to be in and were like, "Please, can you delay production?"
Wow.
So they delayed production by a year so that Nathan Lane could do The Birdcage and then do the Broadway show, and then he won a Tony Award for the Broadway show.
Makes sense.
Because he's fantastic.
Yeah.
He's so good. I absolutely love Nathan Lane. What I didn't realise, because obviously I didn't watch The Birdcage in the 90s, and I had no, like, awareness of celebrities to any degree in the 90s. Nathan Lane was not out of the closet at the time he made this film.
Oh, okay.
So Nathan Lane is, he's known as a gay actor and a very prominently gay actor. Very well known on Broadway, and he's in a lot of TV. I've watched him recently in Only Murders in the Building. He's fantastic. He was in The Good Wife. Great actor. And at the time of this film, he'd been out to his friends and family for years.
Yeah.
So the other people working on the film with him knew he was gay.
Yeah. But
he was not openly out of the closet. And there's surfaced recently, there was an interview with him for something he's done on Broadway recently, which is like I think his 50th production on Broadway or something ridiculous. Like, it's a huge milestone.
Yeah.
But they interviewed him recently, and he talked about his experience with the Birdcage, which I thought was fantastic because I was like, cool, we're going to be covering this movie in in like a couple of months. It's going to be great. And one of the things he talked about was doing press for the Birdcage, and they went on Oprah. And before they went on Oprah, he said to Robin, he was really anxious and really scared, and he said to Robin Williams, I'm not ready to come out of the closet. I don't want to come out of the closet on Oprah.
Yeah.
Promoting this film. But he was convinced that was going to be, and I thought it was interesting because last episode, we talked about, the pressures of being in the public eye and people who've been forced to be public about like things like miscarriages and things that should be very private.
Yeah.
The big example with that one is Mariah Carey on Ellen, where Ellen forced her to admit that she was pregnant in an interview, and then because of that, she had to then publicly announce that she had had a miscarriage.
Yeah, but as we all know, I don't care if was a fan.
Ellen is a piece of shit.
Ellen is a piece of shit.
Yeah, true. But Oprah has also done things like that. I don't think to the same extent.
They're all honestly terrible.
Yeah. So, the clips have resurfaced of this interview on Oprah, and it is fantastic because Oprah is 100% pushing for Nathan Lane to come out of the closet.
Yeah.
And she's saying like, oh, you don't think you're gonna get stereotyped into these girly roles and whatever, and like really pushing him. And every time she tries to go in that direction, Robin Williams steps in and changes the subject.
Wow.
And it's just like, what a great friend.
Yeah.
And it's like she'll pose a question to Nathan Lane about it, and then Robin Williams like switches into like flamboyant mode. It's like, oh my god, girl, like it's really interesting to watch, knowing that context behind it. That before they went out, Nathan Lane said to him, "I'm not ready. I don't want to do this. I'm not ready to come out." And he was like, "You won't have to. You will not have to." And then he just like totally protected him. So I thought that was really interesting to think about.
Any other trivia?
Oh yeah, I'm sure I've got lots of trivia. I've somehow closed my notes, which isn't good.
Yeah, I see that.
Where'd they go? Oh god, it's panic mode. Yeah, I tried. There's a lot of trivia for both of these films, so I tried to not take down too much of it, but like there's a lot. So the vast majority of the trivia for Mrs. Doubtfire is about Robin Williams improvising everything.
It's interesting because the scene that stuck out for Robin Williams, like just probably being given free reign, is the voices sequence
at the beginning
when he's applying for a job.
Oh right, yeah.
Because it's obviously cuts. It's obviously cuts because he's literally in different positions, and it's literally like
totally different characters.
Voice. They obviously
just let him go for it.
Yeah.
And then edited it together a bunch of them. Apparently there's an R-rated cut of Mrs. Doubtfire because he just kept making like innuendos and things, especially around Pierce Brosnan. Apparently he made it like his goal to make Pierce Brosnan break character as often as possible. So like the scene where he's doing that Heimlich maneuver, he kept making like innuendos to him to try and get him to break character. There's things like the icing on his face in that sequence where he's trying to hide that he's Daniel and not Mrs. Doubtfire.
Hello!
Yeah. It wasn't supposed to melt. That was because of the lights.
Yeah.
So he totally improvised the thing about the cream dripping in. It was like, oh, 2 lumps. So he just totally improvised it. They had to set up multiple cameras on him every time he's on screen because they didn't know what the hell he was going to do at any time. The director Chris Columbus has said it felt like they were filming a documentary because it was not like most of what Robin Williams is doing is not sticking to the script.
He is very hairy.
That's true.
Yeah.
Why did you say that?
Just because I just pictured him as like. It was when you say documentary, most people go to like watching people, because I grew
Oh,
up
you're
watching...
thinking of nature documentaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair. The actor who plays the bartender in the pool scene, he's credited as Dr. Toad. His real name is Robert Todd Williams, and he is Robin Williams' half-brother.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. Apparently the film was originally supposed to be set in Chicago, and then they did like location checking, and they went to San Francisco, and they decided to shoot there. And Chris Columbus, the director, had been living in New York with his family for years, and they relocated to San Francisco during the shooting of the film, and then they liked it so much they decided to just continue living in San Francisco after that. So he relocated his whole family there. It also was supposed to be a much darker film originally, so there was supposed to be a lot more drama elements, and it was supposed to like really highlight the toll a divorce can take on children.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the subjects we haven't really covered is the children.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, sorry to be really harsh, but they're set pieces.
Yeah.
You know, if this was a television show, you would have the daughter probably dating an older man who's out of her, like, shouldn't be dating. The middle child, the boy, being probably rebellious or violent.
Yeah, well, she's the rebellious one, really.
Yeah,
the older child. But they have, in fairness, pretty well-rounded children.
Yeah, but I think it's mainly because they just don't get a lot of screen time. Like there is they have a far healthier relationship with Mrs. Doubtfire than they do with either of their parents.
Yeah, true. Yeah, but they decided to make it more family friendly, so they cut a bunch of the dramatic scenes.
Yeah,
but Robin Williams apparently drew on his real life divorce for the dramatic scenes, so he was going based on his real feelings. And Sally Fields had actually initially declined the role of Miranda because she was having marital problems at the time.
Jesus.
And she thought it would be too real.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to just be depressed by it, so she thought it would hit too hard or too close to home. And Robin Williams convinced her that she was the right choice for the role because of what she was going through, and because she could bring that into the role.
Yeah.
And really empathize with her character.
That's like next level method acting.
Yeah, so essentially both of them were bringing their real life experiences into that. Also, Pierce Brosnan apparently had kind of gone under the radar before he was cast in this, and this film raised his profile enough that that's why he ended up getting the James Bond role. Because he was so good, or because he was, his profile got raised so much by being in Mrs. Doubtfire.
Pierce Brosnan is an interesting actor, because other than James Bond, like, I can't think of anything he's actually done that was, and I was going to say good, but like, they were relying heavily on they were overestimating the power of CG in his era of Bond, because
right.
you haven't seen Bond movies, yeah. Some of the sequences you watch now and you're just like, you think Escape from LA is bad from the CGI, and there are sequences in the old Adam West Batman show that are just, they don't even green screen, they just film them and did the same thing that they did with like Star Wars, because I don't think green screens were around in that era. I might be wrong, they might have been like very early on technology. But yeah, the Pierce Brosnan James Bond movies have some real janky green screen work.
Fair enough.
I think he parachutes. Oh, there's an image in my mind, and I don't know if it's real or not, but because it's a James Bond movie, it could be. He rides a tsunami in... That's
Escape from LA.
No, wait. He rides a tsunami in the Arctic.
Okay.
But he's not surfing, he's like wakeboarding.
Alright.
But after parachuting out of either a crashing plane... It's all very weird, but...
It doesn't make me want to watch James Bond movies, to be fair.
Fair enough. They're mostly misogynistic and, like, fantasy escape ism for twisted men.
Fair enough.
There's obviously people who like them for other reasons, but I was just fine. Well, I like them. I like some of them for just how over the top and stupid they are.
Yeah, that's right.
Like Moonraker, where they have like a laser battle in space, and it's like, isn't this
Star Wars?
He's supposed to be a spy. Like spies are supposed to stop wars from happening, not be like in the middle of them shooting people. Like he's a bad spy. I'm not going to get into like too much into it, but James Bond is a terrible spy.
Fair enough. The original screenwriter of Mrs. Doubtfire was fired because the ending was too unhappy because the parents don't get back together. And they made several rewrites to have a happy ending, and then they realized that actually the original ending was better because they don't want to create the illusion that divorced parents will always eventually get back together.
Yeah.
So they rehired the original writer and were like, hey,
well, at least they
back?
Rehired them instead of just got somebody else to copy their work, because that would be some plagiarism shit right there.
Absolutely, yeah. So they were like, hey, sorry, you were right. Rehired them and went with the original ending. The address that Miranda gives on the phone for where their house is the actual address of that house. And it is now a tourist attraction, which it became after Robin Williams' death, because fans flocked to that address after Robin Williams' death and turned it into a memorial.
And it sucks if you owned it.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I think they just set up a memorial outside it, and then it ended up being turned into a kind of a tourist attraction after that, because he was a very, very, very beloved actor who is sadly missed.
Yeah. Box office ratings.
Oh, we haven't even gone to trivia on the Birdcage.
Sorry.
Forgot we did another movie. Similarly, along similar lines to Mrs. Doubtfire, Mike Nichols, the director of the Birdcage. Mrs. Birdcage. So Nathan Lane and Robin Williams are both incredibly well known for improvising absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Like famously, I think we talked about it when we did our Lion King episode, that like some of Timon's lines are improvised by Nathan Lane and they had to like animate things around it. But yeah, so Mike Nichols made it a requirement that they had to get at least one good take of each scene stuck to the script before he would let them do their improvisation.
Fair.
Because otherwise it's going to be like
chaos.
Yeah, just pure chaos. I already mentioned the stuff about how the casting used to be, how Robin Williams was cast as Albert initially. What was the other thing? Oh yeah, so this I found very interesting. So Mike Nichols, the director of The Birdcage, hired a documentary filmmaker named Rick McKay several months before he started production on Birdcage to go to major cities around the world, so Paris, London, San Francisco, Atlanta, and make a feature-length documentary about drag queens so that he could then show that to his actors as like research before they started production on The Birdcage. That's
really cool.
Yeah, so he literally paid a documentary filmmaker to go make a documentary about drag queens. He made a feature-length documentary about drag queens just to train the actors on the whole community and industry and what they needed to be like. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I wonder if it's in some like anniversary or special edition version of the movie.
I don't know. Has there been one of those? If there has been, I would like to own it, so I should look into that. Oh yeah, and I think that because the only other trivia I had was about Nathan Lane turning it down and the production. So the production that he was in was a Broadway revival of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, and so he won his first Tony for his performance in that Broadway show.
Sure.
Budget and box office. So they're actually quite similar budget-wise. Mrs. Doubtfire had a smaller budget. So Mrs. Doubtfire's budget was $25 million.
Yeah.
Birdcage was $31 million. These are both highly successful films, but Mrs. Doubtfire was more successful, probably because it appeals to a wider audience, being that it's aimed at children.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Doubtfire made $441 million at
That's
box
a
office.
lot of cheddar.
Yep, and the Birdcage made $185 million at
It
box
still
office.
made more money than some movies do.
Yeah, and that's quite a lot. I mean, it's 6 times its budget.
Yeah.
So, pretty successful film overall, and it deserves it. It's a good film.
Cool.
So, anything else you want to say about these movies?
No. Thank you for joining us for Pride Month. And
you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at ittakes2_pod, Facebook and Tumblr at ittakes2pod. We're on YouTube at ittakes2nz, and our website is ittakes2.co.nz.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Goodbye.